Thank you very much for joining. So let's welcome our speakers. John, would you like to go first and introduce yourself?
I'm John Voss. I am the head of product design at Descript. We're an AI-powered video and audio editor. Before that, I was at Squarespace, where I was the lead IC designer on their design platform team, which owns their design systems, fairly robust. And that I was at Stitch Fix, where the lead designer for a brand new design system, where I took it from 0 to 1 over the course of 3. So I'm very passionate about design systems and system thinking, and very excited to talk with you all.
Great. Amy, would you like to share your story?
Hi, I'm Amy Lamb. I'm an engineering manager and the design systems lead at Sage. We are a mortgage loan servicing company. We bring the modern experience that customers now expect from loan organizations to loan servicing. I've been working on the front end and dabbling in design systems for over a decade, since before it was called design systems, maybe style guides. And it's a joy that has grown and can work in it full time now.
Love it, love it. And today we have engineering perspective and design perspective on the same call. So we'll have a lot of interesting discussions today. We would like to start with a quick overview. So here's the design system maturity model that is available at the moment. As you can see here, there are like 5 different levels of maturity, where it starts with UI kit, then goes into design library, design system, scale design system, and public design system. This is all coming from the design perspective, right? And this is why we have Amy today on the call, where she will bring some interesting thoughts on the engineering, and we will be able to enrich this maturity model. The UI kit, the design library, this is the place where the file is being used across a couple people, and there is a small team gathering across one specific source where they are agreeing, okay, like here are the main tokens that we would like to use, here are the main components that we would like to have. The level 3, this is not about design anymore. This is when engineering and maybe even content are coming together and we're connecting the dots between different disciplines. How we name things, how we group things, and what kind of variations of the components we have. The scale design system, number 4, this is where your design system is not only supporting one product, but supports multiple products at the same time. And there's so many additional things from the ways of working that you need to follow in order to make it very smooth. And the level 5 is just like maybe a dozen of design systems at the moment in the market, where you're not only creating a design system and unlocking the value within your organization, but you're also making publicly available. One of the examples is IBM Carbon Design System, or the one from Atlassian. There are a couple, or Primer from the GitHub. Then we will talk about the value and the purpose of the maturity models. So, John, would you like to start our discussions, and from your perspective, and also please share spicy takes as well, what's the value of this maturity model? Is there a value of this model overall?
I think models in general are helpful as frameworks for thinking about a set of problems, right? They give you a really scoped way of considering your situation. So I look to maturity models as a gut check around what the popular thinking is, a reminder of the full scope of things that I could be doing, a rough approximation, order of operations. At the same time, I think it's really when you're actually building your own design system to where that models are just approximate and they don't necessarily every context. So looking at this specific model, I see things that are in level 3 or level 5. I've seen design system teams do when they're really only managing a design library. So it's not quite as rigid as you see on slides. I think that's an important piece to remember as you use these models to think about your own system. Is this isn't you have to go through every step. It's something to help you make good decisions in your own context.
Amy, you're coming from engineering perspective. What are your thoughts on the maturity model like this?
Yeah, totally agree with what John said. It's hard to say that you tick all the boxes if you're at level 1, level 5, level 4. But it's definitely interesting to have this list and think about the things you do well and maybe don't do well or don't do at all. I shared this slide with my team yesterday, and we were having a laugh about some of the things we're excelling at our level and some of the things we're not doing below our level. It's great to have the list as a conversation starter.
Love it. I believe as a quick summary here, right? So this is not a law to follow, This is more like a guidance, right? And the checklist might be, some of them might, you can move them around and you can make your own within your organization, but this is like a starting point for the people. And also, I've seen some interesting examples where it's not just like a check mark, it's more like a traffic light system where you could say that the red one, it's not covered at all. The yellow one is partially covered. We started working on that. And the green one, it's fully done. And we all agree. And the interesting thing that I've seen so far with other teams is that when you have this kind of maturity model within the team members, some team members might say, oh, we already have design tokens, and they will mark it green. But some other people from engineering might say, actually, it's only available in Figma. So that helps people to connect their understandings and balance them out and understand, have this common ground and understanding that, okay, like here's our actual definition of design tokens. It's not done yet. Let's invest some time into that and make sure that it's done. Great. Emmy, you mentioned that some of the things you are ahead of time, right? Like maybe it's a good insight for reshuffling those like kind of checkpoints and maybe move them around because looks like the MCP servers and design system assistants right now are becoming much more closer than we thought. And maybe they will be available in the level 3 or even level 2. Could you please elaborate what are your thoughts like from the team members? Like maybe some insights if you would like to reshuffle some of those checkpoints?
Yeah, sure. MCP servers are definitely hot right now and can be really interesting to play around with Figma or other tools that you're using. Take some trial and error for sure and can burn a lot of AI usage. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to embrace AI and see how it can better improve designer developer handoff. As much as Figma and other tools have evolved, there's always a chance to make it better. Sometimes I think I have a very engineering heavy design systems team for context, which is different from the rest of my career, where they've usually been more designer heavy. And it's just great to have a common language where design, product, engineering, other stakeholders can all speak the same language. So as an engineer, I'm biased. I love to get things in the browser, have them be interactive and clickable as much as possible. So yeah, I see MCP servers as something that could definitely move to level 3. And as they get more popular and people are sharing tips and tricks, seeing that grow. But
one more thing that I wanted to highlight is from engineering perspective, right? And maybe we could do that later in the stage where all together people will start adding sticky notes. Maybe if they feel like we forgot something to add here in this checkpoint and they would like to change it, please do. While we are talking, if other people who are listening to us have any thoughts, please add sticky notes below the level with your feedback. And also, if there are some checkpoints that are missing, please add them. If you would like to reshuffle or change them, please add all of them. If you would like to be recognized and be a part of this open source, please make sure to turn on the show and hide author. I will add all the people who helped with the design system maturity model into people who contributed so that it will be like truly community driven. Coming back to the value of the maturity model and its use cases, John, I have a question for you. Is like when exactly those kind of maturity models could be helpful? Do you believe that could be a part of specific rituals or maybe planning? Maybe the only time when it's needed is during the yearly OKR planning, where we are not just focusing on the delivery, we're also focusing on operations and ways of working, the craft, the quality stuff. And what are your thoughts? What kind of rituals and use cases of this maturity model might be?
Yeah. Planning rituals, planning checkpoints in evolution when you're getting your design system off the ground or when you're planning the quarters, when you're road mapping, establishing long-term visions. One thing that is maybe a sticky note that if I was brave enough to risk trying to talk and do Fig Jam at the same time, the value to the team, the product, the business that the system is driving. I think that is one thing when I look at maturity of the design system, one metric what is the circle of impact that the design system is having? Aligning the design system team is connecting design and engineering. Is it actually helping to drive the product? Some design systems move from this of just documenting what's standard into setting and leaving that standard. And like are design leaders seen as company? I think that a maturity model that addresses itself to that is also really when it comes to measuring and communicating the value of the design.
Wow, this is great.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of herding cats in design systems work. And yeah, I think it's almost like an overarching banner, how the company sees the design systems value, like across 1 through 5. I think like design systems can be really impactful. The more you are providing the company with value, the more impact you can have in terms of creative direction and how you want the product to evolve. A really good point, John.
Love it. John, you sparked another interesting thought, right? The value of design system being unlocked, right? People could use this framework or any other frameworks as just a starting point to tell that we are, for example, on level 2, but we would like to be on the level 3. And in order to do that, we need like engineers in the team, right? But the value that it will be unlocked. So the purpose of moving those into more mature levels is that the value will be completely different. The impact will be completely different, right? When it's a design library, it's only affecting designers, right? And only in Figma. But when we move into level 3, this is the time when the engineering and design, the values unlocked. So this is the way also how you can communicate that it's not just different steps, but like different types of values being unlocked on each of these levels that will help you to communicate the value and secure more resources for your team.
Yeah, I think, again, like one of the things that maybe could be an added dimension of a maturity could be this sort of umbrella around sort of design system are you building? Design systems can lean more operational, more executional, more technical, they can more people and collaboration driven, vision and experience oriented. And I think both are design systems, both are valid approaches for companies to take, right? How you think about impact and also how you think about growing the system. It may be that if you have a more experience driven system, it's not necessarily about deepening the tech stack, about broadening the design skills or the design disciplines the system is able to reflect, right? So like motion for me is a great example. You could have design 3 motion guideline, but that's a different level from having someone in your design system team with deep motion experience do real motion design work, right? So I think that there are lots of shades of.
Love it. Love it. This is great. And I believe another point that we can talk about, right? We also talked about the context that this maturity model is not applicable for everyone. This is mostly for like enterprise and product companies. Agencies might have like completely different perspective on that. So we spoke about for leaders, but for people, can it be used as like a motivation, like a career path where if people are feeling stuck and they're feeling that they're just becoming this like component factory of creating components over and over again, then maybe this maturity model can be something where people will be excited about. Oh, yes, we're on the level 3, but there are so many interesting things on the level 4. And also this maturity model can be used internally within the organizations where if someone will share some interesting idea around, okay, let's try to create our own AI assistant, for example, they can add it as a checkpoint into the maturity model. So it will become this kind of idea bank of all the future things that will excite and motivate people to evolve.
Yeah, one of the things that like is nice about can even be strengthened, that it's not just about scale and depth. Team is, okay, so the design system owns the component library and these processes. And so growth means we do more of those and like we have more advanced versions of those. But maturity is also about branching out. Like, for example, once we nailed or got into a good state within this problem set, we're going to be in a really good position to expand into a new problem set and develop motivating. It takes really intentional framing because it is very easy to get stuck in version of growth that is just more faster, deep, richer. And one of the core promises of design, hey, if you stick with us, you get to solve bigger and more interesting problems. I think that's really interesting to think about how a maturity model can motivate people to solve those bigger and more interesting problems.
Yeah, for sure. And design systems, it's just blowing around in the wind. And that can be really empowering, like establishing new copy standards across the app, building out multi-product support mentioned in level 4. You might have one product that's the gold standard and another one that is trending more toward the design system. But it can also be very dynamic and hard to balance depending on company priorities. But it's also really powerful. And I think one fun thing about working in design system is if you're an engineer or designer working in content and you like that dynamic changing environment, it can be a really fun career, but also have a big impact on the company and the product.
Love it. This is great.
As we're about what a maturity model would look like, I wish that it more of a spider graph, like those graphs with by that you can move up on each axis and you get this different shape based on where you weight. Just because you really can, as a design system, we do want to be like technical innovation is what matters to our product. We're going to go really deep on technical innovation and we're going to index less on setting the experience standards. So we're going to collaborating with design teams to the product design should be, let teams own that. And we're going to focus really heavily on the tech behind it and making that really seamless. Or you could say we're going to focus heavily on people and experience. The thing that I like about something like that is that it's an assessment that imply like a linear right or wrong way. If you're assessing yourself one axis and a checklist, like it's easy to say, oh, I love those personality tests where you look at a spider graph and you say, this shape means you're the communicator or you're the visionary or I would love to see that for design. So got some shapes where you're not really spread out very far on either axis and you are the beginner, you're the nascent design system, and that helps you understand.
Love it. Great. Let's go through the questions. There was a question, do you have a resource where each point is explained? Yes, everything is available on the website. So you will be able to see the design system maturity model. I'm thinking about the way how to make it open source on the GitHub. Hopefully soon it will be available there. But you will be able to copy any of those things as SVG and just copy and paste it into Jamboard or into your PowerPoint slides and just use that as you move along the way. And there are some playbooks as well, first 90 days in design systems, but it's still work in progress. The second question, what is an MCP server? How do you include tracking measurement of success or KPIs in each different level?
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
I feel like there is, I can start and I would love to hear your thoughts here. I feel like this is like the third type of visualization that you can make as a part of communicating the value and the way how mature you are. So John, you mentioned about the spider graph, right? So this is more related to like people overview. The maturity model of these 5 stages, it could be used more like as a team. But for the tracking measurements of the success, the easiest way is to set up Power BI or any other BI systems to visualize all these data points and have a proper storyline connected to your OKRs where you will be able to say, okay, the adoption per product per page is growing or the usage within the Figma per team is growing. But we'll love to hear your thoughts on that.
Think of it as like the maturity model. I split in the maturity model planning and tracking slightly separate thing. I think generally if we're using like light, yellow light, green light sort of thing for planning, you might say, hey, the less mature models or sort of the model has been really underinvested in, you're going to be more reactive in your plan. Maybe it's not so much at all as just like fielding requests and responding to needs. And your planning might graduate to you're thinking ahead, but it's very vibes based to more formal road mapping, multi-quarter vision kind of deal. And I think the same thing with like maybe when you're just getting started, it's vibe. You haven't gotten far enough. It's not adopted enough to really know how it's performing. So you just see, does the team feel like it's in the right direction? That can move qualitative feedback from the people using the system, then more into sort of those levels of analytics and business intelligence. I'd love to hear on the engineering side.
Tracking can be tricky because sometimes you might have super high numbers, but folks are using in ways you didn't expect, which can be a super interesting thing about building a design system is just seeing how it's used. So it's almost tricky to go fully on tracking and numbers to determine success. Even like how management sees like the overall product, how like stakeholders are like seeing the product as a whole is important. So it's almost like your KPIs have to cover both like metrics in whichever way you can best present them, like depending on what stage your company and your design system is at, but also like a opinionated, maybe vibes, like John said, is a good way to put it. Like, how are people seeing the design system? Are they seeing this as a place to go to like impact product change? Are they seeing this as a place to go if they want to make an overarching change to the app? Or sometimes it's an improvement in just one area that you later bring to the rest of the app or a separate app. Yeah, it's always tricky to write those metrics, but depends on the organization you're in and how you best want to present the design system.
Yeah, I think to piggyback off what Amy was just saying around a lot of it depending on how the design system is seen within your company, I think there is a really marked difference between how the design system was thought of at Stitch Fix versus at Squarespace. We were part of the platform team, right? And platform infrastructure, whether it's technical or design related, is an investment you make because you need a platform. And so the measures of success were much more internal and around reliability, internal consumer trust, and things like that. Whereas Fix, we're really thought of the design system as much more a part of the end experience. And the things that we were looking at in terms of our measures of success was, were we helping product teams ship faster? Was the design system instrumental in up-leveling end user experience quality? And were we doing things like helping to elevate the brand, right? And so really understanding why your company has a design system or what leadership is expecting from the design system and how they're thinking of it will help you track the right things. So you're not just saying, we've increased Figma component usage by 20%. Maybe like sometimes you're lucky and you have a leader who's, that sounds great, awesome. But a lot of times be like, okay, but what are you doing for the product or efficiency or cost?
This is like really a tough question. We are going to chat about the measuring design system when it comes to measuring the usage data in Figma or GitHub, or actually looking into the adoption metrics for your product per page, where you could explain to your leaders that here's our design system. On this specific page, it's being covered by the 30%, and this is the way how you can show the growth. I have another question, Amy, for you. How do you deal with snowflakes? What are the criteria to decide snowflakes to be official component?
Yeah, I think what the question means is like sometimes a component might come up. Something that came up at my work recently was a scheduler, like the way you'd schedule a calendar, recurring calendar events in Google Calendar. But for reasons we wanted to make it a component because we wanted to have like very strict ways where you could set up events. There might be companies that had like yearly holidays that are specific to one company and not another. So it depends. You have to use your best guess. Sometimes I guess like from a technical side, we do follow SEMVer, meaning that when we 1.0.0 a component, we intend it for like general use for everyone and consider it pretty stable. Breaking changes would change a 1.0.0 to a 2.0.0. But we release components at 0.x.x level, meaning that these are experimental. They may or may not become a real component. That kind of helps from a code side. In Figma, we put a construction label on it to say, hey, this is new, experimental, we're trying it out. And I feel like just having that environment or culture of let's try this out and see how it goes can be powerful in terms of like experimentation and seeing if something can become official. But at some jobs, I have been on design system teams where we maintain components in the product repos themselves that don't officially belong to the design system, but are owned by the design systems team. That can be a tricky thing to balance when you do.
Yeah, I really like your point on December, how to communicate that some of the components are still in progress, and when it starts with major update, that means that it's available and stable. Love it. I hope we answered Eugene's question, but what is the snowflake? Is that some kind of request that is coming in and we are not sure if it's becoming a component or not? Maybe Eugene, if you could clarify what snowflakes means to you, that would be great.
You know how every snowflake is unique?
Love it. Got it. Okay, I have my new term in my dictionary, so I'm going to use that. So thank you. How do you measure the time saved in Figma and time developer saved? I feel like we will talk about that on the Measuring Design System event. We have a lot of things there. Have you used the maturity model to help advocate for more resourcing dedication to a design system? So this is the place where we can show where we are and where we would like to. And by showing some market examples, the value that you can unlock on each of those levels, you will able to secure the budgets. But again, all of those things are not working as like just one maturity model, right? As we discussed, you also need to think about the metrics of your current adoption and also the current value that you are bringing. It can be efficiency, it can be quality. And capturing all of this together, making sure that you already have some interesting case studies with your product teams, making sure that you have some numbers to prove, understanding the future state, and also the adoption. Maybe you are right now supporting only 15% of the product teams, but if you will have more resources, you could support 30%, and that's twice more value that you can unlock just by investing by a specific number of resources to the discussion. John, Emmy, do you have any thoughts on how to advocate for resourcing dedication to a design system?
Yeah, I'd say that like a part of working in design systems is a bit of sales. Like you are selling the design system always. And having that, I don't want to say always be closing, but I can't really think of another analogy, but having that mindset like allows you to build that reputation of the design system being reliable, of it being really useful for the company, helping engineering, design, product, content, other stakeholders. Resourcing dedication to a design system depends, ebbs and flows, like depending on company priorities. But having that mindset of like always showing the value of the design system can be really powerful when you do need to hire or when you do need to expand the team or get more resources. It's a delicate balance. Sometimes design systems sit in engineering, sometimes in product, sometimes in design. It depends on the company. So it's like your stakeholders are close to home, which is really useful for getting feedback, but it also means they're close to home. They're constantly using it and feedback can change. So it's just important to keep those relationships strong and listen to your stakeholders often. The more value the design system is providing, the more you can advocate for more resources.
Emmy, we can move to the next topic of, so this design system maturity is coming from design perspective, right? But as an engineer, what is your perspective on that? Like, how would you reshape maybe this maturity model into engineering design system maturity model?
Yeah, let's see. I guess it depends. Like even a UI kit and a design library could be code first. It depends on the organization. Personally, like one way I got started in design systems was through hackathons, like working on hackathons saying, hey, how can we make front end at this company better? And I feel like that can be like super powerful. So maybe it's almost like you might call it a component library instead of a design library. It might come from like a front end first perspective of, hey, what are the patterns that we see like across our apps and how can we converge them to one? With the snowflake example, do you have 3 buttons across the app or do you have 10 variants of buttons? Maybe some of those can converge and settle on 3 and get rid of like the 7 snowflakes of buttons. So yeah, I guess it's almost like from a code perspective, like a shared place where you typically use UI that help you build UI. But that often is in tandem with design and product. Storybook is a pretty good tool for designers, product, other stakeholders, like how things work. And yeah, even at my current company, sometimes we do build components code first. It just depends. Does that answer your question or?
Yeah, let's brainstorm. This is like co-creation session, right? And all the people who are listening to us, please add sticky notes here as well, and let's try to brainstorm together. There, like we as designers sometimes start with one FigJam file. And then we understand, okay, something is not working. We need to create a separate page within the FigJam file where we will have all the components and we will start like organizing things. At some point of time, it's not enough, and we are creating a library that connects to multiple files and people can reuse, and this is the place where we start collaborating. When it comes to code, is there some kind of parallels here where if you have one monorepo and there is no like dedicated folder in your monorepo where you are capturing common components, this is the time where like you don't have this is like level 1, right? The level 2 maybe is when you have a separate repository and all the other products are just calling or using some of the things as npm packages, right? Maybe that's the some of the signals that will help people to understand, okay, like this is where you are, but if you would like to move forward, like this is, you might want to distribute your components as npm packages, for example.
Sure. So yeah, maybe level 1 and 2 might be you have a mono repo, meaning there's just different sections of code all combined in one repo. There could be some sort of shared section, just, hey, we're moving components here as we work PR by PR. So I'm building a new feature. I've used these buttons. I've used this form. I'm now going to move that to a shared directory, like refactor this code as I'm building this product, get a design system off the ground, and maybe socialize it through. Sometimes companies have like front end organizations or Slack channels or rooms, just socializing, hey, you should use this in the code. I guess like evolving that to become a standard, maybe at level 2. Next time you're touching an area of the UI, you need to replace it with the shared components. Yeah, maybe level 3 would be like a separate repository where design system components are in their own repository. That would allow you to unlock versioning and maintain things in a separate way. Also, in terms of code review, like that could be brought in at any level. Just who reviews this code of the shared folder? Who reviews the code of the shared components that might be in a different repo? So there's definitely ways that this can translate to code, I think, like even if it was just a code only design system. Yeah, even like nowadays, a lot of people like ShadCN is a super popular project because a lot of people are just copying like Shad instead of like necessarily versioning it. And since it's headless, you can just make it your own. So yeah, there's other ways where like folks are starting with that from the get-go and like new projects. So like how they scale that and make it more formal. Yeah, it could definitely evolve 1 through 3 in terms of maybe at first I just start with Shad boilerplate. And then maybe level 3 is like my own customization of all these headless components and how we want them to look in a separate repository.
Love it. Love it. This is great. John, do you have any thoughts on that?
On what a code first design system would look like?
Yeah, just some reactions. If not, we can just move forward. Just want to check.
I generally defer to engineers on what the code side of the design system should be. I'll say there's a great question around, should these still be called design systems or design components? I think that's very spicy. I think it would say something philosophically about the system, I think, although I'm not sure what that would be.
Another like spicy take that I wanted to discuss is the actual level 5. And is it like actually valuable or not at this point? The reason why I'm saying is, let's take as an example, Google, right? They are on the level 5. This is so advanced, so mature, like huge enterprise. And maybe if we will try to reverse engineer their approach, we will be able to understand what the future state might look like for the design systems. When I started chatting with people from Google, I was like, guys, you have material design system, but why it's not being used across all your products? And if you will go into the search, Google search, it's not the same as like Google Mail or Google Calendar. They're all like look separate, right? First of all, on the level 4 already, you might have multiple design systems within the organization, right? Supporting specific portfolios, specific domains. And the answer was very interesting, is we can have vision of what's the future of design systems consistency will look like as material design system, right? But every product, they are not focused on the unification. They are focused on their value of the product, right? They are running a ton of tests, maybe like per week or per month, where they are trying to see different types of the search bar just within the Google search, right? And it changes every time. There are so many tests are running. And there's no way that design system will dictate how products will use the component because they care about their metrics. So what's your thought on that when if you are becoming so advanced, unfortunately, you can follow design system, but the product metrics will dictate how the experience will look like at the end.
Yeah, that's interesting. A friend was telling me They started a new job recently. They have 11 internal design systems. So I was like, wow. Yeah, Material UI has become like Google's Material UI has become a really popular project. A lot of other design systems riff off of it. And it's considered to be very stable. So I imagine that for Google to meet different product needs, like all this A/B testing you're talking about, they might have to do things in a more experimental way that would take away from how long and rich Material UI has been around. So yeah, can understand that viewpoint for sure, like for the sake of improved product metrics on new products. Not sure if eventually maybe some of those things come to the design system. Not sure how it works with Material, but maybe that's like an option down the road. Oh, this has been really successful in search, like this tweak to, I don't know, maybe the search bar or the pop-up. And maybe that eventually comes to Material, but it might depend. John, what do you?
Yeah, I think material is like not a beast of its own entirely, but like I think there's a level down in public, the level before it in like this class of public design system in my mind, which is like publicly shared, but not necessarily like for public use. And then once you get into this publicly shared system that's almost like a product in and of itself, I do think that like it's not something, it does feel like break from this chart. It does feel like then you're not actually, it's not so much a system like for one company. It is a self-contained product of its own class. And not every design system will go through that growth. Like that is not, it doesn't feel like a natural extension the same way that levels 1 through 4 do. I think maybe like level 5 is actually like publicly shared, build in the open, making open source things. But there's maybe a level 6 that's actually design system as public product or design system as platform, where its scale is even broader. And then I think Brad Frost raises a really interesting question of, is there a level 7, which is like design system as web standard, right? So he's talking a lot about like a global design system, and essentially it is a level on top of HTML or a thing like CSS, right? Like building tokens into the standard architecture of the web, right? And then does the word maturity still accurately describe this model? Because I don't think that, as successful as I am with Descript design system, I don't think it's going to become a web standard. That's not my goal for it. That's not like what my team is building toward. Is this then a design system complexity model, or a design system scope model, or a design system impact model? If we're going to include these like truly public design system as product, like I think it stops being about maturity a little bit.
Love it, love it. And another hot take that I have is level 1 and level 2. Emmy, you raised a really good point of ChatCN. Should people start with buttons or not? My belief, we shouldn't. And we should focus more on, if we will take a look into atomic design, right? There are atoms and elements in the beginning, atoms and molecules in the beginning. But in another spectrum, there's like templates and pages. My perspective, what we are shifting right now, the organizations shouldn't be creating buttons. They can just use some open source frameworks, open source libraries like Shatzian or any others, and focus more on the experiences. As you mentioned, right? Like the scheduling experience. Let's try to unify the experience, the scheduling, instead of focusing on the buttons or checkboxes or search bars. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Should level 1 or level 2 be starting with buttons, or we should focus on the experiences?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Buttons and patches usually seem like good places to start, but totally get it. One great thing about using like headless design systems like ShadCN is you do get a lot of, for instance, accessibility benefits out of the box. Shad tends to use Radix or Base UI under the hood. And it's great because a lot of those libraries are like built on just semantic HTML, like helping to keep us all closer to the web, closer to web standards, staying accessible, having keyboard navigation. Yeah, it's tricky. I guess it depends on what product you're building. If it's a landing page, yeah, maybe you want to start with some styles. But if you're like getting straight into forms or tables, that might be like another place to start. So it depends. But yeah, I love the movement of like headless component libraries. I just think it's super interesting. And yeah, hoping to see that grow. Maybe new web standards could evolve. Like I'm sure we'd all love to see a better HTML select, just select an HTML out of the box, better date pickers, that type of stuff.
I would
Yeah.
say, yeah, I do. I think like it depends on your organization is basically the TLDR of my take too. But Dan Mall had a talk called Your First Component, which is saying, hey, the first component in your design system should be the thing that is like load bearing and unique about your design system. And that will give teams the most impact, save them the most time. And I think that's a great point. That's really interesting. He used the example of Uber and should Uber build a button first or should Uber build a map first? And arguing map was more valuable. At Stitch Fix, we built a button first because that was the most visible pain point. And our experience was so disjointed at the time, button was the only thing that was shared across multiple teams. And so by building the button first, we got to test our process of building and implementing a component horizontally, which is really important. I think like the other bit about the context is sometimes it's going to be a button or a component based on the technical reality of where you are. A lot of people are getting a design system up and running in a legacy product that has very little wiggle room for integrating new technology like headless design systems. And that's just going to be so. That's why I think like the longer we have this conversation, I'm like, this is like an impact thing. I feel like it's maturity really ties into sort of the level of impact you're able to have in the context you're working in.
I know that we are out of time, and thank you very much for everyone who joined. Donna, I would like to personally thank you for all the insights that you've been adding to the FigJam board as well. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you, John. Thank you, Amy, for all your insights. I'm sure we were able to spark a lot of conversations and ideas from all the people. The recording will be available on YouTube. Thank you also for the script. I will prepare everything in the script and we'll publish that on YouTube so everyone could watch that. And if you would like to chat with like-minded people, there is a Slack link. We have like more than 500 people. So feel free to join, ask any questions. We can continue our discussions there. So thank you very much for your time. See you next time. Take care.
I'll